Hello, everybody. Welcome to Endgame Sensei, where I give a position to our aspiring GM players. I am David Bruce, and I am Kostya David. We first get their general impressions on the position, and then we move on to see who can play the position better. Now, before us, we have a position from Game 6. I chose this in celebration of the event, Carlsen Nepo, just concluded today. I will share my own opinions of this position, which I haven't looked with the computer, but I did spend hours and hours streaming this position live, so I have some sense of what to do and why, or who's better and why. But it's still a complicated struggle, and I will hint that the players themselves did not agree on who was better and why in this position. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to start a little poll here. So if you're watching live, you can participate in our poll. Who is better, white equal, or black? Okay. So I'll throw it over to you guys. First of all, you guys, by the way, these guys are in the West Coast, so the game started there 4:30, but this position was reached at a time where they might have already woken up, and they might have been watching it a little bit. I had been streaming it since 7:30. This was the longest stream I ever did. I think it was well over 6 hours long. So, yeah, already here, much had already happened before we got to this position. Yeah. Okay. Let's start with you, Kostya. What are your general impressions of this position?
Yeah, so of course, right, we saw the game live. I think I started past this point, but obviously I played through the game a bit. So during the live game, when we were watching it for the first time, I think it was a little bit past this, but I felt like objectively it was probably drawn, like the computer could hold it, but I still felt like Magnus had great chances to win the game. And then he ended up kind of grinding it out, even going through an end game that everyone said was like supposed to be a theoretical, or table-based draw or whatever. So I definitely feel like white has great practical chances in this kind of position.
And by the way, I need to add, very important, black has just played bishop e5. I should have said that just already, but there it is. Very important to say that white is to move. David, what are some of your thoughts?
The screen says black to move, Jesse.
Yeah, your screen says it's black's move.
Oh, effing hell.
That's fine. That's fine. Wait. I was actually thinking about it.
Why does my screen say black to move?
It's just the text on the stream.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that's an ancient text from an ancient show, my friends. That's an ancient text from an ancient show. Let's remove that.
Okay. I mean, I assume that white's better in this position. With the two rooks against the queen. Plus, having watched the game, I know it's pretty significant that black's kingside pawn structure is a little bit messed up. It really hampers black in a lot of ways, both offensively and defensively. So I think clearly white's better. I think the position's super complicated and like too hard for me to play. So, so I was hoping you'd give us a position much further along in the game. I had imagined that we would try playing the rook, knight, and two pawns against queen endgame. Like the very, very last phase of the game. This phase here is intimidating. I feel like I'm still going to make a lot of blunders at this phase.
And I will tell you that this is the, by the way, part of the idea of this whole Endgame Sensei show was to put the participants in a stressful situation, like usually happens when you have endgames these days, i.e. not a lot of time left. And especially Magnus, playing white here, did not have much time. Yeah. So I want to stress that here.
Well, consider me stressed. You have succeeded.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Also, I can say I only joined your broadcast about 10 moves after this, like right after they'd made time control. So I have not seen, I just looked up online here for a second. It looks like the position you're giving us is at about move 30. So I have not seen the next 10 moves, which apparently were played under time pressure. I don't know what happened during them. Apparently, well, so I've heard people say that Magnus and Nepo made some mistakes in the time scramble themselves, which really bodes, again, ill for me. But I actually never went back and looked at the 10 moves between moves 30 and 40 that I missed. I've seen moves 1 through 30, and I've seen moves 40 through 136. But I've never seen moves 30 through 40 of this particular game.
David, let's do this. I want to ask you to just to frame it, because I have my own way of framing it, and I'm going to talk about it when you guys are playing. But how would you frame the struggle here?
Well, Black's got a weakness at B5 and White's got a weakness at A3. And those are pretty critical. There aren't any comparable weaknesses on the king side at the moment. So it's kind of a question probably of tactically maneuvering towards the opponent's weakness / covering your own, I would think.
Kostya, you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, we talked about this during the show a lot, but for me, what I like is that when you have 2 rooks against the queen, it's like a lot of the simplifications kind of favor White. So a lot of the variations we're looking at, like White really wants to trade off the knight for the bishop, and then the 2 rooks just dominate the queen, especially since when you don't have a lot of weaknesses with the 2 rooks, and yeah, there's kind of very little the queen can do, which kind of felt like that here.
Yeah, I agree. Like we analyzed a phase later than this, but where I think we all agreed that the knight for bishop trade would often favor White a lot. I think one other thing that could be going on in the starting position is that White would love to find a better square for the knight, maybe. Because, yeah, if you could put the knight on a square where it's defended by a pawn, I think that would help White's cause a lot. I don't know if it's possible, but I remember in the game, it seemed like when Magnus transferred the knight to F4, whatever, 15 moves from now, I think that felt like it was starting to help him to get the knight off of a dangling square.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I see. I want to address a psychological thing in the chat, and that is this. Someone says this feels like a late middle game position. And one thing that's interesting, actually, I just want to put this out there that I don't think it affects the valuation of the position when I say it like this, is if it were to be like queen and knight versus queen and bishop, we would definitely call that an endgame. But now this feels so unbalanced and so rich and weird that, yeah, you might say to yourself, oh, this is a middle game. To me, it's definitely an end game, I want to say.
Yeah.
But I understand the impetus to say, oh, this is a middle game. I kind of get where that's coming from. Okay.
So basically, it's like an end game, but because it feels more complicated to us, we think, well, maybe it's a middle game because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Now, I want to stress that we're going to go over the actual moves played after they play, and I am certain that they will play different moves. But I think the most important thing that will be interesting to gain from this is what kind of, I feel like both sides are going to need a kind of grounding of what it is they're doing. And I'm certain there's more than one way to play. I had a completely different notion of how White should play in the game, and I kind of think I'm right. In any case, we'll talk about that more in a second. All right, you guys ready?
Sure.
All right, so David seemed more optimistic with White, and Kostya was more leaning towards equal. So we always do it. So the person who is more leaning towards a position gets to play it. Are you guys on live chess?
Yeah, should be.
Yes.
Right, so, and we're going to do 5-5, so there'll be 5-second delay.
Wait, 5-5?
Isn't that what we've always done?
Normally we do 30 seconds.
Oh, 5:30, excuse me. Thank you. Okay, 5:30. Thank you for reminding me. Boop. Boop. All right, here it comes, guys.
Okay.
Oh, David Proust, you're not online. Oh, it's D. Proust. Darn it. Sorry, my bad. $5.30. Unrated. Boop, 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 pop. All right, here they go, guys.
All right, I see it. I'm gonna put in headphones that I'm not gonna put in. So.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So really interesting struggle. The first moves, by the way, that it's very difficult. So let me just say, I think there is an obvious problem for white of the A3 pawn. And actually, before I talk the obvious problems, two rooks versus a queen. One of the things I wish they had said, they knew this, but they didn't say it, is you need to coordinate the rooks. If the rooks coordinate, they're just simply much better than the queen. If they don't coordinate, then the queen will be a nightmare. So the question is, how do you deal then with this A3 pawn? If you lose the A3 pawn, as does happen in the game, then there's going to be questions of, the pawn running. Now we're going to see in the game, Magnus played H4 and not Rook C5. And this is really, so yeah, and one of the things I knew that we would get is a very, that it would diverge instantly from the game. So in contrast to a lot of the other Endgame Sensei episodes we've had, where I felt there's a more let's say there's a correct way of playing, I knew that this wouldn't be just super simple. Now I do think Queen D7 is the right move because you do not want to let the rook take the pawn. And now here's an interesting thing. So what Rook CC2 signals is that David is ready to assume the position with Rook A2. And Rook A2 will guard the pawn. Now it also, of course, threatens knight takes E5. So there's just some direct questions in the position for Kostya to answer. I want to admit something. When I was streaming it, and no eval bar, no anything from the players, I thought the decision to exchange the queen, the two rooks for the queen, was just like a clear mistake. That was my take on it. And Nepo in this position felt he was pressing, and I was like, "What, dude?" That's what he said at the press conference, and I was like, "What, dude? Are we for real?" And so there's just a very interesting and spicy debate right there. And in hindsight, I think Kostya is probably right. And I think he's probably influenced when he says that it's closer to equal. He's influenced by that fact that he knows from the press conference that it's not so easy for white. I was going to say something really important. What do I want to say? The rook going to A2 is something that Magnus clearly did not want to do because I'm a mediocre fool. That was my first instinct. Why don't you want to do it, though? Because it signals that you're not coordinated. This is a difficult moment for Kostya, by the way. If he leaves the long diagonal, maybe he won't come back. And so there's the question of, should he play bishop A1? And I think so. I think so. Because if rook A2, I have bishop C3. If rook C1, I can just go back. Al Gilda, thank you for subscribing. Queen B7. I think that's a clear mistake because I really, really, really don't want to give up the bishop. Yeah, I think that's a plain blunder. It might still be hard, but I think that's a plain blunder. We definitely take that bishop. Thank you very much. Kostya, what are you doing, boss? What are you doing? Stinking up the dojo. Let me tell you guys, I played some tournaments recently. I stunk up the dojo, man. Just full on stench, my friends. Oh, I'm sorry to say it. It really got gross out there. It really got gross. Now, I think what his intentions are is to defend like knight takes bishop, pawn takes, let's say rook c5 would be the most aggressive move. And then queen e4, if rook takes b5, queen b1 check, king g2, queen e4, and try to pretend that you're holding that thing. The good news for white, though, is there's no rush to go after, the pawns. Yeah. And one of the things I talked about on the stream is that when you look at classic players, especially guys like Kramnik, and this was actually the point I was going to say. When you look at guys like Kramnik, they really demonstrated in a lot of endings how the two rooks really can play against the queen. And the obvious thing to know about it is that the rooks can attack a point twice. When I say a point, for example, imagine a pawn, and the queen can only defend once, right? And Kramnik showed that in a lot of beautiful endgames. I might show his 1999 game against Fiddler. Made it look easy when, of course, it's not easy. And one of the things before I talk about h4, I want to say is Kramnik and Svidler were doing commentary, and they also felt that it was a massive blunder for Black to give the two rooks for the queen. One of the things about the position for Nepo, though, that Kostya is destroying is that the queen and bishop really need to stay centralized. It was one of the amazing things about the position is that the centralization of the queen and the bishop were key to possibly saving the game. I think bishop b8, Daddy doesn't like it. Daddy doesn't like it. Right away, there's an idea of knight c5 followed by rook d7 and knight takes e6. And, if I start knocking on the door of the f7 pawn, that's going to be very unpleasant. Yeah. So knight c5 is the obvious move. And, I want to say Magnus, we'll see, played h4 on move 1. And interestingly, did not play the intuitive rook c5, rook cc2. And I think bishop a1, we'll have to talk about it, but I think that's the intention after rook cc2, because you got to stay on that diagonal. Yeah, it's true, Urksor. He said he really wanted to trade the bishop. However, one thing I knew right away when I saw that he played h4 is he's a maximalist. This is one of the things about David, and he always wants more. This is both a good thing and a bad thing when it comes to his chess. And so he thought he could take it later. And now he's doing some really highfalutin fancy stuff. And it might be simply winning. He clearly wants to play knight e2, knight d4, and just go take things. It might be enough. However, the bishop is going to come back to e5. Yeah. Urksor, we're going to have to ask him, buddy. Like I said, man, he's a maximalist. He wants it all. Punk like me, I'm content. I can take it and run. David wants it all, though. Let me just say, too, I'll talk a little bit more about this afterwards. But the initial position is really interesting to me because it kind of, I think, says a lot about what the kinds of things we're looking for in this kind of ending, i.e., isn't it kind of interesting that the bishop and queen centralized are so strong? And in particular, isn't it possible to say that the bishop is much stronger than the knight? I.e., that's one of the reasons, David, you should have taken the thing, buddy. All right, knight e2 is played. Several people have come up to me. I've got played in some of these tournaments where I stunk up the dojo, and several people came up to me and they said, I'm not making this up, they said, dojo, the Sensei is their favorite show. So that was kind of cool to hear. We got a bunch of different shows, but yeah, they liked the Sensei best. F5, okay. Makes some sense. Gives the bishop a retreat square if it needs to. Yeah, and this knight maneuver is real cool and all, but well, there's an obvious question that David can ask here with rook c5. Does rook c5 followed by knight d4 win immediately? It kind of looks powerful. My intuition, by the way, is that in a practical game like this, that the bishop and the queen were ultimately going to be able to hold their own, because I felt it was going to be easier to play, and now, but maybe that I'm getting proven wrong here. Because after I don't know how black's supposed to do this, because knight d4 is a very powerful move. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Kostya's Endgame course that you can find on Chessable. And I woke up this morning, it was like 6:30. I was getting ready for my day, and I turned on the Twitter, and some young woman had posted one of the problems there, one of the endgame studies from Kostya's business. And I was like, okay, this will be an easy way to start the day. Dude, it wasn't so easy, man. I had to work at it. It was kind of hard. So I haven't played around too much with those positions, but that was a tough endgame study that I did this morning from there. Okay, bishop f6, and we're anticipating now knight d4. However, maybe what David is discovering is that on knight d4, some opportunities of hope, some glimmers of hope might exist after the sad-looking queen d7. So that if rook b5, we have bishop d4. And we'll say, in a different endgame sensei. Actually, it's not true though. Knight d4, queen d7, knight f5. Hello. In a different endgame sensei, Kostya put his pawns in the same color of his bishop, and I really yelled at him. So maybe he's learned his lesson, and now he's putting all the pawns on the opposite color, and it's absolutely correct. And in fact, one of the key reasons black might have hope for survival in this position from the very beginning. The pawns, especially a4 and b5, being on light squares. So, the idea is the black bishop controls the dark squares, and now the bishop and the pawns control the light. So, queen d7, no puedo because of knight f5. Is the game coming to its end? F4? I don't know. Queen e4 is Kostya's intention. Okay, so he is claiming that the queen is going to wiggle and jiggle if we take the pawn on b5. And like in the game, it's very hard once the queen wiggles and jiggles to defend the a3 pawn. However, once the knight lands on b5, it's going to be hard to take the a3 pawn. We will have to say, though, that then the knight the technical difficulty might be that white has difficulty moving the knight away from b5. However, one simple idea that white will have will be knight b5, rook d7, some kind of knight d6, playing for some kind of mate. And that was one of the key ideas in the game as well. There it is, knight b5. And I'm going to go ahead and say this position must be winning for David. By the way, they have 30-second increments, so even though it seems like Kostya's losing on time, there's still hope. Hope isn't the word there. He's not going to lose that time. He might be out of hope, but he isn't going to lose that time. All right, f4, trying to get tricky and the sticky. And we're anticipating gf here because ef would lose to queen e1. Gf, bishop h4. And, yeah, white still has some practical difficulties, I guess we could call it. Perpetual check being one of the potential problems. All right, so knight c3 is a thought. Rook d7 would be a very ambitious thought. Knight d4 is a thought. I have a feeling at least both. Knight d6 is a thought. White's winning, but he has to be careful. This would be move 40 right here because we started around, or maybe next move 40. Knight d6 is a pretty ambitious move. I'm sure it's fine, but it's ambitious. And I'm assuming the intention is to bring it back to c4. Yeah, this position was actually, it's going to take some technical skill from David, because imagine you either crash through on f7 or you start pushing b5, b6. And b5, b6, you're going to have to really have everything nailed down when you do it. And one thing I'm not entirely happy with this plan is that when you play knight c4, maybe you don't have to play knight c4 directly, but when you do play knight c4, let's say you do it next move, your rook on c5 is a little bit loosey-goosey. All right. Does he have a better way to do this than just knight c4? One thing that's nice about the knight on d6 is that it prevents bishop f6. And we saw earlier David had a chance to take the bishop, but he didn't do it. All right. Check to the miserable king. Now, because h5 is covered, we could also play king f3, though king f1 somehow feels more natural. For Max and Evan, maybe. Max has been making good gains, man. He's been making good gains. My intuition here is that David should play this quickly, i.e. both king f1 and king f3 feel similar to me. Okay, king f1. The pressure, man. The pressure of this position. Oh, man. One mistake from white and it all comes crashing down. It'll all come down. Bishop e7, boss. Really? Maybe. So, basic question. Can I play rook c7? I also might be able to play f5. f5 might be a nice little move. f5 looks good. Ooh, look at that. f5, queen g5, f6, thank you very much. Queen takes, knight e8, thank you very much. So f5, what are you going to do? Queen g4. Ah, man, that's just looking evil. Oh, f5 comes. Ooh, nice move, David. I like it a lot. I like it a lot, buddy. Nice move. No queen h. I guess queen h6 is too weird for me to even contemplate. So queen g4. And then, as a default, white has fe, but he might be able to find something more spicy than that. Oh, yeah, f5. Very nice move, David. And I am Norma. Which is he playing in Charlotte? Yeah, I guess. Well, right after. I guess that is in Charlotte. Because Charlotte's right after Christmas. Whew, there it is. Dang, Kostya stinking up the dojo. He's stinking up the dojo. Kostya, you stinking up the dojo, buddy?
Oh, my bad.
You stinking up the dojo? What's going on?
It's not a good move at the end.
You too much avocado toast this morning? Is that what's happening? Let me invite you to a board, guys, and we'll talk about it. All right. Kostya, it says you're not online, but maybe that's a... Let's try that again.
Yeah.
Hello. I'll type it. Sometimes you got to type it out. Hello, Kostya. Invite selected. I've invited Kostya.
Yeah, that was a tough game.
Okay, so let me just say a couple things that in terms of the framing. I just want to tell a broad overview of what I told chat to you guys, and if you want to respond, you can. So one thing that I thought is interesting is, first of all, during the game, I felt that white was winning. Nepo, amazingly, felt he was pressing. And that was like a big, like, holy moly moment for me. Because then I fell into self-doubt of like, oh, what's going on? Magnus kind of wishy-washy about the position. Kramnik and Svidler were like, dude, this is probably winning, And what's interesting to me about
for
that,
who?
For white.
For white. Okay.
And what's interesting to me about that, is Kramnik, I feel, was the master of the two rooks coordinating against the queen. But if we're going to defend the honor of black here, then I think the beautiful thing that he's got going is the centralization of the queen and the bishop, and the fact that the pawns are on light squares. So he's got a bishop on dark, pawns on light situation going. And it is very difficult to actually coordinate the rooks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe another thing to add, there's going to be a question that white's doing. You see this a lot in the middle game, where we're asking, is your bishop impotent because I've got a wall on the dark squares? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I saw that Magnus in this position played h4. But I rather liked my first move. It was based on, there's this queen b3 move kind of hanging over me.
Right.
And I thought if I played rook c5 right away, he's got to make a decision about it. And my calculation was that queen b3, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, rook b5, queen a3, rook d1, queen b3, rook f1, a3, rook b8, a2, rook a8 would be winning for white. So I didn't think he would go for queen b3. But if I push him back, then I don't need to worry about it later. So I was trying to deal with that centralization right away.
Okay, no, I thought actually, and after you played it, I was like, oh, that's at least an interesting question. Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'll try to frame the question for Kostya, and Kostya can respond. I think Queen D7 is playable, but after Rook CC2, I definitely do not like Queen B7, and I
Mhm.
think something like Bishop A1 is necessary. I think you gotta keep the bishop on the long diagonal.
Bishop
But
A1.
but I think it's the question of Queen B3 is certainly interesting, and we could analyze that, and we will. Kostya, how did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same issue David had. I thought white takes on E5, rook takes B5, and then white usually wins those with that weak A pawn.
All right, let's go down that. Let's go down that path. So I'll just make the natural moves, David. You just shout them out. So, or you can make
Knight
the
e-
moves too. You can do it. You play white, and we'll just me and Kostya will play black here. So all right, takes, snip, snap.
Okay, so here I thought I have to play rook d1 probably.
All right, I'm going to play this natural move. Well, okay, so here's an interesting question. Do we think that this is winning for white? Queen takes b5.
So I didn't analyze past this. I just thought white would probably win. But I mean, I didn't feel like I could do better than this. Well, yeah. On queen b1 poly, I would play rook f1. And then I just keep pushing the b pawn until black takes it and I take the a pawn. So we always end up with this.
So here's the thing I don't
Endgame,
understand.
more or less.
Let's say I play a move like e4. And before
Yeah.
we start making moves, like you're going to have to attack f7, right?
Yeah.
So when you go after f7, isn't it true that I will always have like dirty checks on the back rank?
Well, as long as my rook is covering d1, right now d1 f3 is the only perpetual I see.
But don't you have to go after my pawn though? I'm saying like don't both rooks have to end up on the seventh?
Well,
Oh,
white plays
you
rook
mean moving
A7.
your king so when I take f7 it's not check?
Something like that, yeah.
White still
So
covers
then
F3.
yeah, so rook f7 will cover f3.
Okay, let's play it out a little bit. Okay. So okay. It is true that it happens pretty fast.
I don't think you need to play e4. It kind of like shuts down your diagonal.
Okay, we can start with this position.
Because in the current position, you've got queen b1, e4. If white doubles, I mean, it's...
Okay,
you're
so
still
let's
cooking.
start with h5. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, the other move that you're probably going to have to make at some point is the king off the 7th rank. So like king g6 is also
Yeah,
like...
that's on my agenda. I'm anticipating h4, but you can do that first. Right here.
Okay. Now the question is, does white need to play h4 or not, right? Before going for it. And I think I might as well.
Yeah, no, that
At
makes
the
sense.
moment, I don't see the downside to playing h4 for me, and I see that h4 for you could be annoying at some point. We'll talk about that on Dojo Talks today, Micro, right after this Endgame Sensei episode.
I don't know what to do. Let's say I do this. While David's thinking, I just want to say the obvious. The question is, Can white organize the rooks while keeping his king safe? All right, I was thinking now David's dirty check was going to be good. This is a hassle.
Yeah, hang on. Let me wait a move.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with this rook first. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I just want to point out a hilarious variation where he's thinking, rook e1, queen b4 nets me a rook. And rook e1 it might be a nice idea instead to e4. I was just one of the things I was afraid of. It's rare. It makes me laugh every time because it's rare that the queen can fork the rooks like that.
I made a move.
Sorry. I was looking up this famous game that I might show you guys a little bit.
I'm having a hard time, by the way. I'll just mention.
No, it's tough, man. I mean,
I'm struggling here.
That's why when Kramnik makes it look easy, and then afterwards says things like, "Yeah, I was totally winning the whole time. What's wrong with you?" Then you're like, "What are you talking about, man? I don't understand."
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us the intention of?
Oh, I'm building a mating net. I'm going to play like f3.
Okay. Not sure you want to play f3, but okay, it's a thought.
I mean, if you play queen e2, I won't play f3. But
no, but like, let's say it was your move and you played f3 and I played e4. Who's done himself a service, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm looking for a chance to play it. Let's say, just the first step.
Sure. Okay. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna go like here.
Okay. Yeah. You're ruthless with the moves that avoid mate in one.
Well, I'm also just trying to get counterplay. I might get.
I know.
Yeah. And this is the kind of thing where, like, yeah, you push too hard, and then you might land up in jail.
Yeah. As long as you're my cellmate, Jesse.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Is there here? Maybe I didn't want to do
a little thing called double check.
Crazy. Called double check. Okay, I'll go here.
Oh man, he doesn't care. Daddy don't care.
Daddy doesn't care.
Daddy, look what I drew for you at school.
Yeah, shoot. I think you think you're gonna end up having to bring that rook home after rook f4, and then I start taking it all.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go to e1.
Well, no, because rook f1, queen e1, you got to go king g2. I start checking you to death. You got to bring it home, and then I start taking the pawns.
Okay, yeah. So rook f4, queen e1, right? And I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's return back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
Okay, and say that Magnus played h4, and then Nepo played pretty quickly h5. I want to say one of my critiques of Nepo this tournament is had a lot of big decisions he took kind of nonchalantly. You know, in h5, I was like, oh, buddy, I'm not sure about that in that position with the knights on the board, you know?
Yeah. I hate that move h5 myself, by the way.
Oh, and I want to mention one of the things I wanted to really drill is that one of the things I learned is that one of the main reasons, main reasons that I learned in hindsight that I was like, maybe black has a chance of saving this, is just the simple idea that the bishop is better than the knight.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us to the next question. Which brings us to the next question. Yo, Kostya, what are you doing, buddy? Queen b7? You out of your mind?
Where am I supposed to go?
Go at a1.
I don't know. It didn't look great there. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm worried. It's hard to do this without a lot of time.
All I know is once the bishop, first of all, Bruce, we're going to have the next question for Bruce. People in the chat were like, didn't he say he wanted to take the bishop? And I was like, yeah, he did say that.
Yeah, so I don't see what the problem is. But how about knight c5?
Okay. And now we're going to put the queen somewhere, probably on c6.
Knight a4.
Yeah.
Oh, did I blow knight a4? Hold on.
Yeah. Strategy's all well and good, but it's got to work out. I think queen e8 is your move
that
here.
Position isn't so dumb because queen c6, knight a4, queen a6. I take on a3. I'm talking to b4. Yeah, that one isn't easy either.
White can throw in rook a2 on your unfortunate bishop after queen
then
a6.
Queen b4.
No. Here.
Okay, let me just do queen c6 here.
Boom. That's the talking that I was talking about.
That's the talking. Oh, maybe have a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So there's knight c5. I need a good move. It's true. It's not, and it's also true. It's not super easy. All right, queen e8.
Yeah. All right. Ooh la la, coconuts.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting hassled. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
All right, queen a8.
Oh. Ooh. It's not going well.
This isn't going well. This didn't go well. Well, that was kind of quick. Hold on, let me check. So I didn't. By the way, one of the reasons I was just like, this is too easy because rook cc2. After the move played, queen b7, you could have just taken on e5. So the interesting thing is, this is a very difficult endgame, man, because I feel like the only reason I said bishop a1 is I feel like you're lost if you don't do it, but maybe it's true. Maybe you're just lost when you do it too. And so at the moment, we're trending towards saying that queen b3 after rook c5 is the only hope. But that doesn't jive with my experience.
Or with what Kramnik would say.
Yeah, so rook c5.
So wait, what's the difference then after queen b7? Why is that so good for white?
Well, for one, I think in general the position. I think the masters of the past would say knight takes e5 is clearly winning for white.
I could tell you why I hesitated, even though I want the rook endgame.
Okay, tell us.
Takes rook here, queen e4.
Mm-hmm.
Defending this and getting into my business.
Right, which is why I was thinking maybe you're in no rush and you should play h4, king h2 first.
Sure, but h4, he still, gets comfortable, gets a front row seat, and king h2, and then maybe f5, f4.
Every time I touch that F pawn, because the problem is now not rook C5, but rook C7.
Yeah.
And then rook D7. That's the issue for Mr. Tissue right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it may be that I was more worried about it than I needed to be, but that's what I was worried about. Actually, even F5 rook C5 looks okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think this is any hope for him.
Okay, how about king G6?
Okay. So white's idea is to play rook C5, I think, or C7.
Or rook C7. Honestly, I was thinking rook, but rook C5 looks fine too. You were the white player, so you should go with your instinct there.
Well, but this is what I didn't choose because I wasn't confident about how to do this.
Well, let's do rook C7 then, because
Okay.
that looks good.
Okay. So now maybe queen F3 for black.
If queen F3, rook C5 then looks easier, doesn't it?
C5 anyway. Yeah, that makes sense. How about this one?
You can try queen B1 too. Yeah, going from behind. F6.
He might also be coming from behind.
G4. Oh no.
That's a problem.
We have a little discussion for your king.
Yeah. No, G4. Wow.
All right, no good, right? Or as KGB would say, it is a medical fact that the king is sick.
Well, yeah, that was my thinking that I would put my queen on E4.
Okay.
But I'm with you guys. I mean, I like the two rooks. I didn't like bishop A1 at all. It just felt like you get stuck.
Okay, so let's go H4, bishop B8, and then now we got a little now it's a little spice happened here. And then the question is, could Kostya have concocted some kind of counterplay? That looked natural, and now maybe we'll say this is a key moment here. F5 was also natural, but How about queen E4? I'm still amazed that Nepo would say he thought he was pressing. I was like, what? You out of your mind, kid?
Yeah.
Let me throw in a light here.
Yeah. This move's okay too. I mean, I think I might have played rook C5.
Yeah. And then I guess queen B1, right?
King H.
I'm not going to check you again, so you can go to G2 if you want.
You could check me again.
But I'm not going to.
Why not?
I'm going to B3.
Okay. Well, I'm playing King H2 anyway.
King H2. All right. This is at least murky.
Yeah, this isn't what I wanted. I can certainly say that.
But then after F5, I like that move. I like that move. I like that move. I felt you were in clear control now.
Okay.
Right? And then your finish was amazing, Don. Beautiful move, David. I like that one a lot, man. Boom.
Oh, okay.
Boom. Let's go, baby. Let's go. And then I guess Kostya has to try queen G4 instead of queen H5.
Yeah. But yeah, I felt it was pretty bad, yeah?
Yeah. I thought your default move here, David, could be FE, but you might have something more phantasmal even. I don't know.
Yeah, I was I was kind of thinking that it would just be FE here.
Yeah, FE makes sense.
I wanted something fancy, but
Right.
I didn't see anything.
Okay, I'll tell you what. So let me show you just, guys, a quick thing that changed my way of thinking about this two rooks ending. It's a famous position. I'm just going to show it real quick. I think it would be a miss for me if I didn't show it. I'd be a remiss or whatever the misses are. It would be a miss. It would be a miss for me.
It would be a miss for everybody. You would be remiss, and something would be amiss with this lesson.
Okay, so this is a position, 1999. Kramnik versus Fiddler. And bishops of opposite color. Murky position. Knight d7 is played. And look at this move. Get ready for it. Bam, baby! It's really interesting. Now, first of all, let's just say, what do we got? Standard position, white's up the exchange for a very healthy pawn on a7. And black has every possibility of constructing some kind of fortress. So we then take this thing, and what's interesting is in terms of material balance, as it's conventionally known, this does not, this makes our material balance actually worse, because we're going to give up a bishop and a queen for rook, knight, bishop, and pawn. Okay? So technically, we're only up a pawn in this final position, but this position.
But you were only up a pawn before also. So it's just, I mean, like by the point system, it's equal. Because the point system says rook, knight, and pawn is equal to queen, although we think the queen often outperforms rook, knight, and pawn by a little bit.
Fair enough. So this position, though, the great Kramnik, the game actually finishes very quickly. I just wanted to say, this is like when I thought of the endgame that we were looking at in Game 6, this is the kind of thing I feel like that White was aiming for. And what's interesting to me about it is, as a kid, and I think a lot of players would be like, oh, this isn't clearly winning. But for someone at Kramnik's level, it's game over. You know, it's just absolutely over. Which is interesting. Like, oh, they understand that this is toast. Yeah. Because it's impossible to prevent the rooks from coordinating. And it speaks to that endgame that we had, where we had, you know, the one with that we first tried to play out, where it was four pawns against 4 with the kings, but there wasn't a loose a pawn like this one. So that was also in that position. I was thinking about this transition as well.
Yeah, I've heard that even if black had an f pawn, this would still be winning for white.
Exactly. I mean, that's where it gets. That's where I have to really, you know, it's really hard to wrap my head around.
That's why I thought the 4 versus 4 would also be winning. Like if 3 versus 3 is winning. Then...
Well, that's what I wonder. Like if Kramnik was with us in that 4 versus 4, he might just be like, "Dude, you don't understand chess. This is totally winning."
I think so. I think he would have to, because black even has like a messed up pawn structure. It has to be good for white. I mean, winning. The only thing is winning or drawing. So winning.
Okay, so let me invite you guys to the board, a different board. Okay. Actually, no, stay in there. Stay there. I'm just going to steal this PGN and put it back.
You're not going to show us how Kramnik won this real quick?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Sorry, yeah. The game ended very quickly. Queen d3, king g1, queen d4, rook c2, and Fiddler had enough. Imagine that. Fiddler understands too. He's like, oh, it's over. I get it.
You can't stop rook a2 without allowing rook a1.
You know, he's just like, that's it. I give. And if I was black, I wouldn't have necessarily understood the depth. I would have understood that I'm suffering, but I wouldn't have understood the depth of my complete desperation. Yeah.
There is queen a4 to prevent both rook a2 and rook a1 for a moment.
And that's what we're saying is you cannot prevent it eventually. You know?
Yeah, but it's enough for white to play rook c2, rook a1. Rook c1 to a1. And then the queen can't cover every square on the a file that the rook could use to double. So
We have an interesting comment in chat. There's so many different commentaries out on this World Championship match. By the way, one of the reasons it was so great, we're going to talk about that in Dojo Talks in a second. But anyways, a comment in chat saying in the Kramnik commentary, they also felt the 4 versus 4 rook versus queen, rooks versus queen was winning.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me bring in this other, let's briefly at least show what happened in the Magnus game. Magnus let it fall apart going into time pressure here. So David's move, the simple rook c5, maybe the kind of thing that we want to do, h4 makes a lot of sense though, because we want the king going to h2. Now, because I don't turn on the computers, but I know, just listening to people, the computers were saying this was equal, just like flat line equal. And I was like, to me, that's like, that doesn't make any sense. That's what the computers were saying here.
Wow.
So h4.
What if the computers know something that Kramnik doesn't know?
Well, I think the computers do. The computers are evaluating like the centralization and all that. Let's just look at rook c5 just again. And yeah, I guess queen b3, man. Queen b3. Yeah, and I think it has to be queen b3, and then the discussion is how do you feel about that endgame? Interestingly, though, right? Carlsen didn't do it. Now Carlsen does not. This is actually a phase of the game in time pressure that he doesn't do well. We're going to talk about his evil. I just want to we don't have to go over the whole game, but there's a portion of evil that's about to happen here. Some weird stuff happened. Here, Fabi said he's never more confused ever about chess. Disappointed because Carlsen played this. There was some very complicated lines here with like rook c2, bishop a3, knight c5, rook d7, and they're on their chess.com team. Their computer told them that was winning, but that's the kind of thing. They ask there's the kind of thing like, there's a computer variation. You ask Magnus about it later, and he's like, "What? What are you talking about?"
They did ask him, and he didn't even know the position they were talking about.
Yeah, he didn't even know what they were saying. Yeah. So here, Nepo loses his mind. He can just play bishop b4. And then the position is arguably better for black.
Thanks for all the great
But
content.
He knew that the knight couldn't
Happy
take his
holidays.
bishop on b2, but he didn't know that he could go to b4?
This is very hard for me to understand. He did not take on b4. He has opportunity number 2 to take on b4.
Jesus! What?
And then he plays e4. And then, honestly, the game is still not over.
Well, let's remember they didn't have increment. They were down to like seconds for the last.
Oh, it was without even any increment.
Yeah, imagine like at one point they were saying Nepo like 5 seconds. Can you imagine not having increment? 5 seconds. Wow.
Okay, I mean, obviously, like the time situation is part of it, but on the board, that's got to be one of the biggest blunders.
That was a big
from the match that like b4 was just hanging for a couple moves.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let me turn you on to this next just amazing thing that happened. So I was doing the commentary with James Altucher here on the dojo, and we were analyzing all kinds of variations, like if the queen moves away, would rook takes a3 be a win? We were asking ourselves this question. There's no real reason for the queen to move away, but here's where a lot of people don't appreciate the depth of Magnus' skill. King h2 asked black, "Hey, buddy, do you want to go for it with queen e4? Do you feel lucky?" It's like there's no point of king h2 other than to be like, "Hey, do you want to think about queen e4?" He did it. And then Magnus, without thinking about it, snapped. Yeah. And then, well, now we're on to phase number 3 now. Well, at least maybe it's phase 5 of this endgame, is deep. And, this one, again, I thought white was winning. The computer, I don't know what, maybe it said white's better or something. But, now it's in spicy territory. And we go another, 80 moves from here. Another 80 goes from here. So I'm going to say this was one of the greatest World Championship games in history. We're going to talk in a second in our dojo talks about the World Championship match, just a couple of topics. Any closing thoughts on this Endgame from you guys?
Yeah, easily one of the best end games ever in a World Championship match. I really enjoyed this one, especially because it was the first win of the match. Such a grind.
Yeah.
And then it just caused total collapse. I mean, it was just like, this is it.
I think that you could easily do a whole mini season of Endgame Sensei just on this one Endgame. Like we did an episode, but like you could definitely do an episode just on the rook, knight, and 2 pawns against queen. Right? You could do another episode on the position before the last pawns were traded, like the phase with rook, knight, and pawns against queen, but with still like the other pawn on the board and what the plans are for white there. You could do another episode on this phase here with 3 pawns on the board. You could do another phase. You could do another phase that we just did. And you could play it out where black doesn't play queen e4 and play out that position several times. So I think it's like the reason that I never played through moves 30 through 40 of this game is because the moves that I'd seen, I wanted to re-see and re-see, you know, and it's just like you like look and look and look. And there's so much to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, everybody, we'll wrap it up there. We'll be right back with the Dojo Talks.